Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily, the first English news program in Poland. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. Popular social media platforms such as Facebook and Twitter have gathered a bad reputation over the last couple of years for systematically deleting conservative content. Another famous platform owned by Google, YouTube, followed the same pattern recently, deleting or demonetizing content published by conservative voices, showcasing yet another case of political censorship by the tech giants.
The episode of I Believe by Paweł Lisicki was deleted from YouTube from Sensia TV channel. We're witnessing something we could call an attempt at censorship or limiting the freedom of speech. It's well known that I criticize the LGBT community and its policies in the show, but I also stress that I'm strongly against any acts of violence and any physical abuse, regardless of ideological or political views. Despite that, my content was removed from the platform. It's obvious that it's not about the alleged promotion of hate on my channel or the defense against violence, but about keeping the critics of LGBT quiet. The Press Freedom Monitoring Center of the Polish Journalists Association spoke about the matter, expressing its fear that the huge internet giants are blocking conservative content, effectively censoring their platforms. The Press Freedom Monitoring Center of the Polish Journalists Association with uneasiness witnesses more and more instances of the conservative content being blocked by the social media platform YouTube, appeals the decision to be revoked and for such practices to not be repeated in the future. According to columnist Jacek Pacan, everything on the internet is being monitored, since information can also be a weapon. These platforms were once considered to be true outposts of freedom, but it was clear that in time they would be tightening their policies and removing conservative content, since it's all owned by huge companies which are mostly run by liberals. For now, protests against such policies are bearing some significance, but who knows for how long. According to YouTube creators, since June 5, 2019, YouTube has made its policy much harsher towards conservative content, often deleting it on the basis of the alleged promotion of hate speech, which rarely had grounds in reality.
20 dead and 29 injured in a shooting in El Paso, Texas. The perpetrator was a young man who was apprehended by the police after a few hours in the Dallas suburbs. Our correspondent from Los Angeles, Małgorzata Schulz, has more.
At this point, it seems that this was the largest shooting in the United States in the last few months, with the highest number of lives claimed. The investigation will last probably for a few weeks and certainly for a few days. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy that has hit the United States. There is another question about security. Why was there no protection in the Walmart? Why was the perpetrator able to walk down the street with a weapon for 6 whole minutes? He wore a rifle, so it was visible. It was not a small pistol, it was a huge shotgun. In addition, the same type of weapon was used by the perpetrator at the California Festival a week ago.
The
first massacre occurred on Saturday morning in the heavily Hispanic border city of El Paso, where a gunman killed 20 people at a Walmart store before surrendering to police. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said the rampage appeared to be a hate crime, and police cited a manifesto they attributed to the suspect, a 21-year-old white man, as evidence that the bloodshed was racially motivated. Across the United States, in Dayton, Ohio, a gunman opened fire, killing 9 people and wounding at least 26 others. Police and the city mayor said the assailant was shot dead by police.
Storms of media controversy arose due to the entries of one Solidarity opposition activist and a member of the IPN, Krzysztof Witkowski. Addressing the mayor of Gdańsk, Witkowski commented on Twitter regarding the commemorations planned by the Gdańsk authorities on the anniversary of the outbreak of World War II. In his tweet, he took shots at the private life of Aleksandra Dulkiewicz, who announced to take legal action.
Dulkiewicz does not even know who the father of her daughter is, so it's not strange that she chose a German fraud and Jewish racketeer for her inept madness on the anniversary of the war. Citizens of Gdańsk, wake up and send this Tuskoid band of anti-Poles to the nut house.
I am immune, and you cannot offend me, Mr. Witkowski. I am not interested in the state of your mind, but you must bear responsibility for your words. Procedures defined by law have begun. In the future, I advise you of one thing: stay away from my child.
My posts yesterday concerning President Dulkiewicz were too harsh. I'm sorry.
The Polish army increases in strength as part of its territorial defense reaches 20,000 soldiers this year. Light infantry were recruited from local communities to fill duties such as serving the population during natural disasters and armed conflicts to limit the enemy's ability to gather intelligence and instill panic. Our reporter, Rafał Trzesnewski, gives us a look into the newly formed units of the Territorial Defence and asks young soldiers for their reasons in joining the ranks.
And remember, the last two are not entering the building, but are securing the sectors left and right. So you and you.
Podchodzimy do budynku.
We go near the building.
Podchodzicie już.
Move.
Krój okna.
Windows, mind the windows.
Organizujemy szkołę.
What we organize here is a tactical training. We've split tactics to respective points and we teach each one separately. So when in effect all these points will form a chain of command that enables the soldiers to deliver. We got elements of green tactics as well as black tactics, and our instructors are focusing in each respective field as they are representing soldiers the proper solution in each case to practice later.
Zobaczcie.
Look, if you go out here securing this sector, so you can cut out your own sector this way.
Ten sektor tutaj, tak?
Then you move and stay here. One here, two there. I'll explain it to you soon.
Tłumaczę za chwilę.
Okay, let's move.
Robimy.
Punktami nauczania są na
Teaching points include entering the building and securing the first available room. That's part of a black tactics that concerns fighting in the city.
która polega na pracy w mieście.
W wojsku jestem niecały rok.
I am in the army less than a year. My adventure started in November and December when I had 16 days of initial training. Right now, we are in the manouvers that wrap up the year of training. Outside of the force, I am a student, graduating from psychology department, and I also have an office job working for human resources. First of all, I like shooting. I did not have experience in that before. Here, I trained in all positions, various kinds of movement between stations. This could be in the forest, or in the city, or in the village in mixed terrain. What have we learned? We learned how to live in such harsh conditions, how to get food and water that is indispensable.
Teren, gdzie jest las, czy to będzie obiekt zurbanizowany.
Lots of exercises take part in the terrain, a hard terrain. One day it can be our field of battle, so here we train. The Territorial Defence mission is supporting the communities, so we are not about to sit behind the desk in a comfortable office, but we train for natural disasters and other catastrophic events as well as war.
Wspieranie lokalnych społeczności, więc my nie będziemy siedzieć za biurkiem przy komputerze w pomieszczeniu klimatyzowanym.
That's it for today. See you next time on Poland Daily. But stay tuned for the Poland Daily Weather Report, followed by the Poland Daily Business section.
Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Tonight Poland will see overcast skies. Koszalin will be the warmest city at 15 degrees centigrade, and in the northeast the temperature will drop to around 11 degrees. The weather will stay the same throughout the night, and tomorrow the temperatures will vary between 20 to 25 degrees. In the next 3 days, the weather will be warm yet slightly overcast, with showers appearing in the northwest on Tuesday. That is all for tonight. I invite you to join us again for Poland Daily Business.
Poland Daily Business Edition. Welcome to the show, and we'll talk tonight about United States and Poland's relationship. Especially, we have expert Jerzy Bielewicz, financial analyst and Gazeta Bankowa writer. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the invitation.
And let us shed a bit of light on this upcoming visit of Donald Trump. He is going to be here for 3 days in the end of August, beginning of September. For us is very important. Every Polish school child knows that September 1st is the first day of school, and the academia, that when the children are remembering the beginning of the Second World War, the date when their grandparents and great-grandparents didn't went to school because they had war over their heads.
It's very, very unhappy anniversary. First of all, it's the Second World War, and a lot of suffering for Poles, a lot of casualties, deaths, which go in millions. 6 million Polish citizens were killed during the Second World War, and especially when German came, they brought with themselves proscription lists and starting executing Polish intelligentsia, priests. The same did Soviets 2 weeks later. Invaded Poland, and the model was the same. They started with the arrests and imprisonment of Poles, judges, police.
Then we had the Katyn massacre a few months later. This is very important day for Poland, very important day for our historical narrative.
It leads us to the point when President Trump, the chief, the head, the leader of the most powerful country on the world, comes to Poland and would celebrate this anniversary with us. I think it's very, very meaningful for Germans, for Russia, and it's very important for Poland, for Polish development, and it puts us in very, very good advantageous situation, competitive. We get a competitive age, and day after the visit we can pursue our interests, pursue investment projects, make sure that Polish economy steams ahead as it has done for past 4 years.
It is a very good time to show Poland to the larger world audience. We will have a huge crowds of American and international journalists who just came to the country to cover this visit, and obviously this is important time in Poland because we will already have the electional campaign. October or early November is the date when the mandatory election are due. We don't know yet the date. The president is going to tell us in next 2 weeks. How this will work for the election time in Poland?
It's, the answer is very, very simple. It's very good for governing, for present government and for parties that are in power. Everybody gets what it's a turning point, I would say. It would be historical event, and it's not only celebration but also signing agreements, visa waivers, so that Poles would not need visas to go to the United States, which that's a nice present for.
Yeah, well, that's a topic that exists since 30 years, as far as I remember. President Aleksander Kwaśniewski promised that,
and finally we've got it.
Andrzej Duda delivered,
which is very, very symbolic. I don't think
Andrzej Duda's election term is spring 2020. Donald Trump's election is November 2020. So will all the parties benefit from that?
It's a good vacation for President Trump in Poland because there are a lot of attacks, sides that attack president in the United States, and we will. When he comes here, he will be welcome guest, and it would be 3 good days for President Trump in Poland, and he would be able to charge his batteries for long time.
Okay, will the batteries of Polish government will be also charged? We are fighting in the Europe for our position. Poland is a country that has been practically colonized by Germany, France, and this is how they look at us, to be honest, as colonies that don't really have a have their opinion. They should not voice their opinion. That's a famous quote from President Chirac almost 20 years ago. 20 years old, that Poland lost its chance to remain silent. But we are now not silent in the European Union anymore.
Yeah, Poland's first, I would say, for this government, and it's so different to previous governments that Poles will know what to do during those elections, and I hope it would be a success for united right in Poland, and there would be a huge victory.
Okay,
I hope for constitutional.
Right. To wrapping it up, how do you see this? The reasons. Are there any common goals and common policies that are shared between government of Poland and government of United States?
If you follow American politics, U.S. politics, it's very, very similar situations. The same organization that are in opposition to Polish government are in opposition in the United States. The symbols are the same. They are marching, and here the LGBT is marching. If you listen to Democrats candidates and to opposition in Poland, it's the same talk. But the United States interest is somehow lost, and the Poland's interest is somehow lost in this discussion. So that's a quality change, that we pursue our interests. And this government has very good results. Compare our economic results to our neighbors, to Germany, to France, to Italy. I just tell you that, in my opinion, Germany is entering a recession, and we have almost 5% growth in Poland. So I think that's the first time that our growth is many times greater in nominal terms, in dollar terms, in zloty terms, than Germany's growth. And it gives us good argument to pursue our interest in Europe, in European Union. For example, the selection of the head of European Commission showed that we are strong right now and that we are not going to be silent.
And we can effectively influence the direction the European Union goes. That's probably too far.
We are doing this. Immigration, that's a subject that European Union follows the Polish road. There are many, many examples. I think that there is a lot of bad happening in energy sectors. The cooperation between Germany and Russia is not good for Europe. And I hope that in the European Commission we would manage the energy sector, because it's key sector for future of Europe and security of Europe. So we'll see. Very important visit, September 1st.
And quite an unexpected development, to be honest. We've heard about that there are discussions and what ifs in June, but right now we know for sure, and more than we've expected, because this is not one-day visit, it's not hours, is 3-day visits, and after that President Donald Trump goes to Denmark. So this is another country that is at odds with the rest of European Union, and that's helping Poland in terms of energy trade.
Very, very meaningful. And I would add that President Trump will meet the heads of states of 3 Seas initiative in Warsaw, and President Trump already supported this idea during his last visit.
Yep,
And
2017.
I'm sure he will do the same during this visit, which would strengthen our role in Europe.
Okay, so very interesting developments ahead of us. Jerzy Bielewicz will definitely cover this story for our viewers, sir. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Visit and conversation. And that was it for Poland Daily Business. Please watch us tomorrow at the same time.
Hello, and welcome again to Poland Daily Business Weather. The forecast for Poland tomorrow will bring overcast skies and temperatures of 20 to 25 degrees. The warmest city will be Łódź at 26 degrees, while Gdańsk and Białystok will see a temperature of 20 degrees. In Europe, Athens will yet again be the warmest capital, while Helsinki will see overcast skies and a temperature of 17 degrees. That is all for tonight. I wish you all a very pleasant evening.
Welcome to Poland Daily Culture. On today's episode, we're here in central Poland in the little city of Łowicz. Behind me is the Łowicz Ethnographic Museum. We're going to be showing you around the museum and all the sites inside. So you're going to find a lot more about Polish traditional culture. So join us on another fascinating journey around Polish culture.
One of the monuments of Łowicz culture, from architectural monument and historical mementos to folk art, is the museum in Łowicz. It is located in the former seminary, designed by Tilman from Jemeren and erected at the end of the 17th century by the primate Michał Radziejowski. The museum sets out to inspire the visitors and sensitize them to the past and current traditions of the region by the means of exhibitions, cultural events, and educational activities. The history of the museum collection in Łowicz dates back to the turn of the 19th century and 20th century and is strongly connected with Władysław Tarczyński, a collector and a social worker. He made his collection available to the public in 1905 and called it the Antiquities Collection. The museum developed rapidly. It owned over 3,200 exhibits and a library until the outbreak of the First World War. Władysław Tarczyński also included objects and tools from the field of ethnography in the historical artistic collection. The Ethnographic Museum of Polish Tourist Society opened in 1910 and based on the collection of an outstanding social worker, Aniela Chmielińska. The collection of the Municipal Museum and the Ethnographic Museum was originally located together in a building purchased for the museum purposes at 16 Staryrynek Street, which was opened to the public until 1939. The period of the Second World War caused subsequent losses in the museum collections. The National Museum in Warsaw took over both collections in 1948 and formed its department. Connected collections were given a new residence in a reconstructed religious building dated from 1689. Owned by the Cardinal Michał Radziejowski Foundation, the branch of the Baroque art in Poland is situated in a former primate chapel dedicated to Saint Karol Borromeusz. It is an original flank of the 17th century building, which wasn't destroyed during wartime. The interior vault is designed by Tilman from Jemeren and is decorated with illusionistic frescoes by Michelangelo Palloni, showing the life of Charles Borromeo, a patron, missionary, and bishop of Milan. It's the best example of the Italian painter's artistic work in Poland from the turn of the 17th and 18th centuries. The paintings perfectly harmonizes with the stucco decoration on the vault and walls. There are also examples of artistic craft inside, such as furniture, fabrics, glassware, goldsmith, work, porcelain, painting, and sculpture.
Okay, I'm here with Mariana, and we're in another part of the Ethnographic Museum, though a little bit different from the rest of it. So, Mariana, where are we right now?
Jesteśmy w jedynym skrzydle tego budynku, które ocalało.
We're in the only wing of the building which survived the Second World War. The building was first constructed as a seminar, hence this part was a chapel named after St. Charles Borromeo.
Pod wezwaniem świętego Karola Boromeusza. W okresie II wojny światowej budynek został.
During the war, the building was bombed, but this wing survived, so that's the only part we can say is the original structure. Wonderful frescoes remained, painted by Michelangelo Palloni. Here we have the exhibition presenting the Baroque era in Poland.
Mamy tutaj właśnie wystawę prezentującą barok w Polsce.
Could you tell us when was the seminar built?
Budynek został wybudowany w XVII wieku, początkowo właśnie jak...
The building was constructed in the 17th century, at first as a seminar, so as a school for priests. Then, its purpose changed many times. There were many schools here. For example, there was a school attended by such figures as Józef Chełmoński, a famous Polish painter, or Stanisław Noakowski, a great architect. During the partitions, there was also a tar prison here. Then the building was bombed during the Second World War, and then in the 1950s it was to be renovated for the Ethnographic Museum. Now we have here the exhibitions I mentioned before, the Władysław Tarczyński one and the ethnographic one by Amelia Chmielińska.
I kolekcja etnograficzna Anieli Chmielińskiej.
So, in fact, he was very lucky to survive the bombing during the Second World War.
Sometimes it is said that it was nothing short of a miracle.
So everything else in the area was destroyed and just this survived?
Legenda mówi o tym, że Niemcy w momencie, kiedy opuszczali Łowicz,
The legend says that when the Germans were leaving Łowicz, they wanted to bomb as many buildings as possible. This building included.
Ksiądz, który tutaj się właśnie opiekował tym.
Meanwhile, the priest in charge of this wing said that the frescoes were painted by Michelangelo. He intentionally omitted the fact that it wasn't the Michelangelo, but Michelangelo Palloni, and it got the Germans thinking if they should leave it untouched. Later, when the building was bombed, it was said that the wing survived because of this priest.
Mówi, że dzięki temu to skrzydło ocalało.
The branch of the Baroque art in Poland is situated in a former primate chapel dedicated to Saint Karol Borromeusz. It is an original flank of the 17th century building which wasn't destroyed during wartime. The interior vault is designed by Tillman from Gameren and is decorated with illusionistic frescoes by Michelangelo Palloni, showing the life of Charles Borromeo, a patron, missionary and bishop of Milan. It's the best example of the Italian painter's artistic work in Poland from the turn of the 17th and 18th centuries. The paintings perfectly harmonize with the stucco decoration on the vault and walls. There are also other examples of artistic craft inside, such as furniture, fabrics, glassware, goldsmith work, porcelain, paintings and sculpture. The frescoes, called the most beautiful north of Alps, are example of illusionistic paintings and probably the most interesting applications in Poland. They occupy an area of approximately 360 meters square. They are divided with buttresses into 4 bays and 2 wall shields. They depict the procession of St. Charles Borromeo during the Plague of Milan, St. Charles Borromeo visiting school building site, St. Charles Borromeo hanging out arms and hugging orphans, St. Charles Borromeo giving the Holy Communion to the infected, glorification and the Assumption of St. Charles Borromeo. The individual scenes are set in painted illusionistic architecture. The order of the scenes is not accidental. It was addressed to future clergy enrolled to the seminary.
is the wall to those who fell in the Warsaw Uprising at the Warsaw Uprising Museum. Today, we meet a remarkable man, 10 when the Second World War broke out, 12 when he joined the underground, 13 when he was tortured by the Gestapo, 15 when he took part in the Warsaw Uprising itself. This is the remarkable story of Professor Julian Kulski. Join me on Poland Daily History as we look at this remarkable man's story and his remarkable life. So I find it hard to understand when one reflects on what happened, that a nation that produced such great literature, such great music, such cultured people, scientists, could at the same time stoop to these, these levels.
I have a theory that the Germans were always like that, and one of the reasons is they have tree people, forest people. They don't get enough sunshine, and once in a while they go berserk. But they've been attacking Poland for centuries, and it's nothing new.
But if we just go back...
the degree of cruelty was unbelievable, but they were prepared for it, just like Ludwig trained me. The young SS men were, they all had German shepherds, they loved those dogs. Germans love animals. And then on order they were told to cut the dog's throat. And this was the beginning of carrying out the orders, which were difficult. And Himmler, one of the reasons they put up the gas chambers, because the Germans were having a hard time carrying out the orders of shooting, committing mass murders without being affected by it. And that's why they turned it to factory.
Yes, I think I read in another book a story of that Himmler had at one of the camps in the early days. Yeah, he'd attended it, but he'd been shocked. He'd been watching the Germans shooting people in these open graves, and he'd had some blood splattered on his uniform, and he found this was absolutely, this could not be allowed to happen again. We must think of a better way of doing it. Extraordinarily, the depths of evil, I think. I mean, it's so hard to understand.
Well, I had an experience years later. I was traveling, working internationally in Nepal, and I was working with the German, I was the architect, and he was the school equipment expert, and we did the work. We were working very well. So after we finished the report, I suggested we go out and relax. I got a bottle of scotch, and we took a boat and got in the middle of the lake, and Otto, that was his name, asked me, "Julian, I want to ask you a question." I said, "Go ahead." So he said, "Can you ever forgive us, Germans, for what we did to you in Warsaw?" And my first initial reaction was to move the boat back and forth and say, "Otto, do you know how to swim?" And he says, so he got quite upset. He said, "No, I'm serious, but it's a serious question." I said, "Well, before I answer, I would like to ask you a question. Were you in the Hitler group?" "Yeah." "Were you in the SS?" "Yeah." "Were you in the Gestapo?" "Yeah." "Were you happening in Warsaw?" "Yeah." "And you are there to ask me to forgive?" I said, "I don't know who can forgive you, but I can never forgive you." But I said, "Let's remain friends." And we did. We went back to the field and finished the bottle of scotch.
And so we just very briefly return to you're in this prisoner of war camp. Then I read in the book that In fact, when it became clear the camp was going to be liberated, the people were sort of, or prisoners, were told to sort of be liberated by nationality. And the Americans sent the trucks first. And a friend of yours encouraged you to leap on one of the American trucks and not wait for whatever else might have...
Well, actually, I was standing inside the gate, and all my buddies were standing with me, and these thousands of American military trucks came over and were picking up the Americans and the British. There was an international camp. We had no idea, and I had no idea, that the next morning the camp would be liberated by the Russians, by the Red Army. And I was just standing there, and my American friends jumped up on the truck, and they said, "Come along." And they took me up and put me up because I could hardly walk onto the truck. But later on, I found an interesting why the Germans. This was happened 6 days before the end of the war. So the front was still on the Elbe. The camp was halfway between the Elbe and Berlin. And I could never understand how the German army allowed American military trucks, hundreds of them, to cross to pick up the soldiers. And I found out just recently that the American forces sent 4 paratroopers, dropped on the camp. They went and talked into the camp commander, and he got in touch with the headquarters of the German army to allow it, because by that time the Germans knew that it was the end of the war within days, and they didn't want to have the Allies, the British and the Americans, captured by the Red Army. No. So, but they left us Poles and the Slavs to be captured by and that was, so it was on the instinct that I saved again my life.
So I was going to say you had yet another lucky escape.
I've been very lucky all my life. I mean,
The Warsaw Uprising began on the 1st of August, 1944. 0 hour, or W hour as they called it, was supposed to be at 5 o'clock. But the first outbreak of shooting began earlier in the day at Żoliborz, the northern suburb of Warsaw. That encounter, which began at 1:30 p.m., was the first skirmish of the Warsaw Uprising. As the saying goes, much has been written. Was it a good idea? Was it launched at the right time? Were there other opportunities? You may well ask. The fact remains that it did take place, and the people who took part in it were brave and beautiful. In the annals of uprisings against tyrannical rule, the Warsaw Uprising is unsurpassed. For 63 days, the Poles waited for the Russians to come across the river from the east and aid them in their rebellion against the Nazis. This did not happen. History has told us why. The Russians were quite happy to watch the Poles be destroyed by the Germans, rather than for the Poles to be free after World War II. There is no doubt about this. This was Stalin's plan. The Warsaw Uprising is indelible on the memory of the 20th century. At the Warsaw Uprising Museum, this history is set in stark terms. You're able to take a close look at those 63 days of fighting for freedom. This is an experience that will not leave you untouched. It will change the way you think about history of this time. And it will remind you of what a great capital Warsaw actually is. The city that stood against one of the greatest tyrannies the world has ever seen and rose again to become a modern leading city in Europe. The next series of episodes will take you through the history of the Warsaw Uprising. Thanks for watching.
Hello and welcome back to Poland Daily Travel. We're here in the Warsaw Uprising Museum and it's a fascinating place. Ola, as we're moving along, we need to talk about the Jewish community, I think.
Exactly, which constituted a vital part of the Polish community here before World War II started. We need to remember that once World War II started, Germans would close Jews in ghettos. The Warsaw Ghetto was the biggest ghetto in the whole occupied Europe.
And we're right on the edge of it, aren't we?
Yeah. It was encircled by a 3-meter wall made of brick. People could not get out without a pass. They were living in difficult conditions, overpopulation, 180 calories to nourish one person a day.
180 calories? How can you live on that? You don't.
Yeah,
you
that's why people would die. That's why they would.
You couldn't
suffer.
live on that.
Yeah, exactly.
It was horrible suffering.
Yeah. In the very first 2 years of the existence of the ghetto, 100,000 people lost their lives. But this process of extermination was too slow for Germans. That's why in 1942 they decided to speed up the process of killing people, on mass scale, and to build death camps. Till 1942, only concentration camps operated. After 42, the final solution to the Jewish problem is introduced, and the installation of the death camps, which are eventually constructed on the Polish soil.
And what was the Jewish population of Warsaw before?
380,000 people in 1939, but Germans would drag about 100,000 people from outside towns inside to the ghetto. So during the existence of the ghetto to 1942, we had about 500,000 people living inside the ghetto. And we need to remember that occupied Poland was the only country in the whole occupied Europe where for any kind of help offered to a Jewish person, there would be a death sentence. So those Poles who tried to save their Jewish friends, Jewish neighbors, encountered Jews, they would be executed for that. And I'm sure you've heard that Poles are known all across the globe as the biggest anti-Semitists. But if you go to Yad Vashem Institute in Jerusalem to discover the list of the writers among the nations, it appears that Poles are placed number 1 as for those who saved Jews during World War II. So we need to remember about the facts, not the myths.
Yes, and I think it's also worth remembering that when in Europe there was a decided actual anti-Semitism in the Middle Ages, there was a Polish king, Kazimierz the Great, who invited Poles and Jews into Poland and said, come over here, bring your skills and trade, bring your learning, because they were very learned people as a group, and bring that to us and contribute to our society. Maybe you can help our people learn to educate themselves as well and to learn trades. So there's a long and distinguished history of Poland being open to the Jewish
Poland used to be a multicultural state before World War II. We need to remember about that.
And one other point, now that we got on this subject, that I think is worth making and perhaps crucial, is that the Polish nation, after several hundred years, was the Jewish people and the Catholic people in Poland were inseparable neighbors by this time. So when you live with somebody for hundreds of years, you get to know them, And so any attack on the Jewish people within the country, it was the same in Germany too, but the people were silenced in a way. There perhaps, in Poland, they refused because they were also subjugated at the same time. The Germans just started murdering their own people. They probably had the same result and ended up with their own uprisings in Germany. Although we know there were a couple of plots, but you know what I'm saying. So the point that's worth making is that Polish Catholic and Jewish communities were were inseparable.
Yeah, living so close for hundreds of years,
Yeah.
yes. And also we remember the example of Irina Sendler. She was a Red Cross nurse. She would go to the ghetto and cross. She saved 2,500 kids. So always I'm asking, who was hiding those kids? Once they left the ghetto. Extraterrestrials? No.
These were not aliens.
Yeah.
They were not Martians. They were Poles.
These were
Catholic Poles.
Yeah. Polish families who had to pretend that they have a newborn baby, because these were infants that were smuggled in a bag with double bottoms. So she was so courageous. And her example
She did it on trams, didn't she?
Yeah, also.
Yeah, a lot, sometimes on trams, and etc.
And her life is really exemplary as for what we experience here under the German and the Soviet terror, because right after the end of World War II she got imprisoned by the communist authorities. She was accused for collaboration with Germans. So imagine how crazy.
Topsy-turvy. Yeah. I think we could all learn from that example and learn to live up to a higher standard. We could all learn from that. Okay. Poland Daily Travel. You're a very interesting lady. I'm glad we got you to talk to us. Okay, we'll be right back.